behind the glass. Hey, Jay, we got to get to Frankie, but just want to check in on you real quick. First day back from vacation. How you doing? Sometimes it's a struggle for folks.
You know what? It's actually been a pretty easy transition today. Knock on wood or whatever this is.
It is. Oh, boy. Well,
don't worry. Something will blow up at some point.
Speaking of, that's all going to end right now as we are joined by our Kings insider. He's not going to blow it up. The one, the only, Frankie Cartoscelli. Frankie, it's Dave, it's Jason, it's Jay. Good morning.
I'd like to think that I make life easier on Jay, but, maybe not. Maybe not. But
you do. For everybody, Frankie.
For everybody, Frankie. You're out at all the games. You're watching stuff. You're inside. You are inside. You're an insider, and you're inciting. So let's bring you inside our conversation in the last segment. It was about Keegan Murray and how difficult this is because he's a fine young man who seems to come from a wonderful family. He seems to have the perfect attitude, wisdom beyond his years and maturity beyond his years. He's dealing with a terrible situation with his family, and we are all, as Sacramento Kings fans, always are so incredibly behind him. Yet, at what point do you look at the numbers? We're going on about a month now since the Charlotte game and go, maybe Mike Brown needs to start thinking about giving those minutes, those starting minutes, especially to somebody else.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, it's a very, very tough situation and one that is clearly affecting Keegan, who is a young man in life and a young man in the NBA. But it's something that we talked about with Mike Brown yesterday, and he didn't really show his hand on if he's going to make a move in the starting lineup. I would expect he will not. But Mike Brown has long said that to him, and this is what was going on when the uproar over KZ Okpala starting over Keegan Murray. This is the same thing he was saying early in the season. It doesn't really matter as much who starts games to Mike Brown. It matters who finishes them. And one thing he did say yesterday at practice was maybe we do see Keegan on the bench late in games, and we have seen it already this far over this previous stretch. We could see more of Malik Monk on the floor, who's been one of the Kings' better offensive players. We could see KZ Okpala, who played against Boston the other night and did a great job on both ends of the floor, which was his best game as a King. That's the KZ Okpala that I think a lot of people hoped that he would be when he first signed with the Kings, and who they hoped he would be when he first was in the starting lineup. But Keegan Murray is not going to play late in these games if he's not performing well. And Mike Brown, those are his words. And it's, of course, pretty early in the season. We're not even 20 games in, and we've seen that Keegan has had good stretches before. His first stretch of games were very, very good. And then we've seen him have pretty horrible stretches, and he's shooting 26% over the last 12 games from three. So I wouldn't anticipate a change in the starting lineup just yet, but late game situations, yeah, Keegan could be on the sideline.
All guests come to you from the Folsom Lake Honda Hotline. Folsom Lake Honda, your one-stop Honda shop. Frankie, whether he starts, plays more minutes, less minutes, I'm sure the whole goal for the entire coaching staff is to get more out of him. I know he had 10 rebounds in the last game, but the shots, is it a case for you, Frankie, where the shots just aren't falling, or do you see him pressing? What do you think the fix is, though, for the minutes that Keegan is going to get?
It's a little bit of both. I mean, he's getting open looks. He's getting looks that look good. He's getting shots that look good, and they're shots that look similar to what he was knocking down a couple weeks ago. And there also is a little bit of pressing, or a little bit of just kind of, I think Mike Brown said it yesterday, it's almost like he's pressing but not being the way that he's doing things isn't, he's not being as aggressive as he should, because if he's driving into the paint, like there was a possession against Boston where he drove into the paint and just kind of went up with his left hand, not even with a pump fake or a stutter step or anything, and Al Horford sent it into the second and third row. I mean, he said to Keegan Murray, I want you to go dunk on somebody. If you're driving into the paint, use your athleticism, use your length, and go right to the rim. And he said that you're athletic enough to just completely go over people, and don't give respect to some people in the league that don't deserve it. Now, Al Horford is a player who deserves respect in this league. He's somebody that has more than held his own over the past decade plus. But in other situations, Keegan Murray has kind of looked a little lost in some situations and just kind of not really used his full athletic potential. But the shots, yeah, they look good leaving the hand. And I'm not going to lump him in with Ben McLemore and Nick Stauskas, mind you, but it's almost like that mindset of the Kings have a shooter, a rookie shooter, and when the ball leaves their hands, you just expect it to go in. And right now, it's just the balls aren't going in. And I think they're good looks, and I'd imagine they'll fall sooner than later. But he's going to have to push through this rough patch right here. I don't know if it's too early to say Keegan Murray's hitting a rookie wall just 18 games in. I don't think that's really fair, but we can call it an early season wall.
our Kings insider, Frankie Cartoscelli, joining us every year, especially when the team is bad. There's always a scapegoat and there's always a savior. And whether it is Ben McLemore or Jimmer Fredette or Kyle Guy or Harry Giles, Gerald Wallace, well, that was a good team. It seems that this year the anointed savior perhaps is going to be Neemias Queta in the G League. He was matched up against the Santa Cruz Warriors, including number 2 pick James Wiseman. And he dropped 38, 18, and 3 blocks on 12 of 14. And in watching the highlights of that game, it looked like there was quite a bit of cleanup there. He was tremendous on the offensive boards, and he's just a big body. That being said, do you see a situation, barring injury, where Neemias Queta is coming up to the big club anytime soon?
I mean, the Kings keep getting beaten in the paint, and they have one of the worst defenses in the league in defending the rim and defending the paint. I could see a situation where that happens. I mean, I know that the organization is high on Neemias Queta. They are watching him closely in Stockton, and when you see him do what he did the other night, yeah, I mean, I think there's a definite possibility that if they continue to struggle slowing things down in the paint, and tonight's game against the Suns is a perfect example. You're going up against DeAndre Ayton, a guy who had 29 points and 21 rebounds in Phoenix's last game the other night. It wouldn't hurt to have somebody on the bench like that. And, you know, the Kings do have Rashawn Holmes and Alex Len, but they aren't really known as rim protectors. And that is Neemias Queta's game. He was a 2-time Conference Defensive Player of the Year and when he was in school. And I think that he can bring some of that tenacity to a Kings team that really needs rim protection. And, yeah, if the numbers keep going the way they're going, I think we could see him up sooner than later.
Frankie, you talked about tonight's game against Phoenix. Besides Ayton, obviously Chris Paul is out, but they got Devin Booker, who is as tough a cover in this league. How do you think the Kings handle him?
Yeah, I mean, I would, again, expect – I think Mike Brown bringing KZ Paul off the bench against the Celtics and throwing him out at Jason Tatum, I think that you have a similar matchup with Devin Booker, someone who could absolutely just give you buckets. And I don't know if Kevin Huerter or Keegan Murray or Harrison Barnes, for that matter, can really slow Devin Booker down to the extent the Kings need him to. And sure, Chris Paul being out will help, but it's going to come down to how much can the Kings contain Devin Booker? How much can the Kings contain the Suns' three-point shooting? And I mean, even the Kings on their own, like they need to shoot the ball better. They've been shooting 25% from 3 over this 2-game losing streak, and that's just not going to cut it. So when it comes down to me, I mean, I would say Devin Booker, got to slow him down. And then DeAndre Ayton is somebody who we've seen Domantas Sabonis struggle in the paint defensively. He's done better over the winning streak in the last 7 to 9 games. He's done better in recent memory, but you can't let someone like DeAndre Ayton beat you too. So Chris Paul being out, yeah, that's big for the Kings tonight, sure, but you still have Devin Booker to worry about, and you got to contain that 3-point shooting. The Kings' 3-point defense needs to step up tonight.
Devin Booker and De'Aaron Fox have faced each other 10 times in the NBA. They're 5-5. I would not have guessed that. It's an even split. Someone after tonight will end up on top. And in the end, Frankie, and I don't want to be setting up. We have higher expectations for this team. There's higher goals. We're not into moral victories, this, that, and whatever. But in the end, if this Phoenix team, which by the way is even when it comes to the odds right now against the Kings, they are missing Chris Paul and a couple others. But if Phoenix comes in and wins tonight, that's 3 in a row. But are you still in? Are you in Panic City at all, or you just lost 3 really good teams?
No, I mean, even the way the Kings lost these games in Atlanta, they were down by 7 for it felt like 4 straight minutes. Neither team could kind of pull away until Atlanta eventually made a little run. But the Kings had a chance in that game. The Boston game, they were up 6 with a few minutes left in the third, and then they let the Celtics go on a 37-4 run. I just don't think that's something that's going to happen more times than not. And the fact that, again, they shot 43% from the field and 26% from 3 over these 2 games. Before that, 53% from the field, 38 from 3 during the 7-game winning streak. We know this offense is top tier. This offense it's one of the better offenses in the league. There's so many ways the Kings can beat you. But when you play a team like Boston, you have Kevin Huerter not making a 3, you have Harrison Barnes not making a 3 or shooting a 3. We have Keegan Murray struggles. The Kings, they're a much better 3-point shooting team than 25%. So I think that these past 2 games don't have me in panic mode. Again, we'll see how tonight's game goes. Depends on how this game unfolds. If they lose this game in a different fashion, if shots just aren't falling and they're getting completely beaten in other ways, I don't think it's still time to panic, but there seems to be a little bit, you can raise an eyebrow, but keeping these losing streaks at 2 games and not letting them stretch to 6 or 7 like we've seen over the past couple of years. That's what is going to be really important to me, and I won't really panic unless the Kings let this streak go to 5, 6, 7 games.
We only have 10 seconds, but I want to give you a question from the YouTube chat. Derek wants to know, how did your fantasy football team do this week?
You know what? It's funny. I'm 10-1. I was 10-1 entering this week. I'm going to lose again. I've lost to the same guy. Shout out to my buddy Derek. He's beat me twice this year. I'm 10-2. It was a close one, but not great.
Is it time to bench Frankie's fantasy football team?
Maybe.
We'll talk about that in the next segment. Frankie, appreciate you as always, dude. Talk to you soon.
All right, guys. Have a good day.